Hello there! Welcome back to the Pacific War Channel, the channel where we cover the entire history of the Asia-Pacific War, 1937 to 1945, and all the major events that led up to it. Now, if you've not already done so, please hit that like and subscribe button, as it would mean a lot to this small channel, and it would help feed these two demon birds, as you can see. This episode is going to be part 1 of a 4-part series on World War I in Asia, and to kick start all of this, we're going to have a little adventure in a place called Tsingtao. Yes, the place where the legendary beer is made. This is going to be the Siege of Tsingtao. During the 19th century, Germany, alongside the other European powers, Japan and the United States, had scrambled for colonial possessions in Asia. As we had seen in the Boxer Rebellion, there was literally a carving up of China by the end of the 19th century. In 1898, Germany leased a concession over Zhijiao Bay and Chufu in Shandong province for 99 years, and built up the city and port of Tsingtao, which became the base of the German East Asiatic Squadron of the Kaiserliche Marine. Alongside this, Germany would lay claim to New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, the Marshall Islands, the Caroline Islands, the Marianas, and Samoa. Britain was always suspicious and wary of Germany's holdings in Asia, and had forged close ties with Japan, such as the Anglo-Japanese Alliance of 1902. This alliance continued when World War I began in Europe in August of 1914. On August the 7th, Britain asked Japan for assistance in destroying the Imperial German's navy's raiders in and around Chinese waters. This prompted Japan to send Germany an ultimatum on August the 15th, demanding Germany withdraw her warships from Chinese and Japanese waters and transfer control of Tsingtao to Japan. Germany had until August the 23rd to reply, as the Japanese prepared to take Tsingtao by force if necessary. Germany never replied, and thus Japan declared war on Germany on August the 23rd, 1914, and subsequently on the Austro-Hungarian Empire on August the 25th, because their cruiser SMS Kaiserin Elizabeth remained at Tsingtao. At the offset of hostilities, the East Asia Squadron under Vice Admiral Maximilian von Spee dispersed to various Pacific colonies. Then they rendezvoused in the northern Mariana Islands for coaling before they would try to escape the Pacific Ocean. SMS Emden headed for the Indian Ocean, while the rest of the squadron made their way to the west coast of South America. On August the 27th, the Imperial Japanese Navy sent warships under the command of Vice Admiral Sajikichi Kato with his flagship dreadnought Suo to blockade the coast of Kaohsiung. His fleet consisted of dreadnoughts Suo, Kawachi, Setsu, battlecruiser Kongo, and Hiei, and the seaplane carrier Wakamiya. He was backed up by the Royal Navy's dreadnought HMS Triumph and destroyer HMS Usk. Major General Mitsuomi Kamio led the 18th Infantry Division, numbering 23,000 soldiers with 142 artillery pieces, to land at Yungkao on September the 2nd and Laoshan Bay on September the 18th. China remained neutral at this time and protested Japan's violation of their territory, but did not interfere. Britain and other European powers were concerned about Japan's intentions in Asia and sent a symbolic force from Tianjin of 1,500 men, commanded by Brigadier General Nathan Walter Berendenson. Germany responded to the threat by concentrating all their available East Asian forces into Tsingtao. Their force was commanded by Naval Captain and Governor Alfred Mayer Waldeck, and consisted of the Marines of the 3rd Sea Battalion, Chinese colonial troops, Austro-Hungarian sailors for a total strength of 3,625 men, with an additional 100 local Chinese police. Their warships included torpedo boat S-90, cruiser Cormoran II, gunboats Iltis, Jaguar, Tiger, and Lucius, and the Austro-Hungarian cruiser Kaiserin Elizabeth, and one reconnaissance plane. The main lines of defense for Tsingtao lay along 3 hills, Mount Mocha, Mount Bismarck, and Mount Litzis, extending from the Kaiserstuhl to Litzuner Heights. Each hill held howitzers and forts. A second line of defense were steep hills, and a final line of defense was a network of trenches, batteries, and fortifications surrounding the town. The bay held mines along the approach to the harbor, with coastal fortifications, 4 batteries, 5 redoubts, but all with obsolete Chinese guns. The defenders were outnumbered 6 to 1, and the Japanese forces were battle-hardened, with many officers who experienced the siege of Port Arthur during the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905. The Japanese also were utilizing Wakamiya's seaplane carrier, which could launch 4 Farman Longhorn seaplanes for observation. The IJN began to blockade the coast of Kaohsiung on August the 27th, being reinforced by the Royal Navy as Wakamiya's planes performed reconnaissance on the triple-layered defenses of Tsingtao. The 23,000 troops of the 18th Division began landing on September the 2nd at Lungkou amidst heavy floods. They were soon reinforced by British forces commanded by Brigadier General Nathan Walter Berthelsen with the 2nd Battalion, South Wales Borderers, and the 36 Sikhs. The defenders were sent a telegraph from Kaiser Wilhelm II stating that the colony was not to be lost at any cost and that it would shame me more to surrender Tsingtao to the Japanese than Berlin to the Russians. On September the 2nd, the German gunboat SMS Jaguar caught the Japanese destroyer Shirotae, stranded off the coast, and managed to sink her. On September the 5th, the Japanese fireman Longhorns made a complete survey of the harbor, the city, and the triple defense layers. This information was crucial to the siegers, who now knew the layout and, most importantly, that the German East Asian Squadron had fled. With this information at hand, the IJN retired most of their modern warships they brought, a dreadnought, pre-dreadnought, and a cruiser, while the rest kept up the blockade. On September the 6th, the Wakamiya launched her planes again, this time with bomblets. The Longhorns made a bombing attack on the warships in Guizhou Bay. However, the SMS Kaiserin Elizabeth and the Jaguar had well-trained crews manning the anti-aircraft guns and repelled them. After this, SMS Kaiserin Elizabeth's 15cm and 4.7cm guns were removed to create batteries named Elizabeth, manned by her crew. Alfred Waldeck decided not to spread his forces too thin on the outer defense lines, and instead concentrated all of his troops in the inner defensive circle close to the city. This was to prevent any gaps and breakthroughs. On September the 13th, the Japanese landed a cavalry corps to raid the German rearguard at Smo. The defenders were forced to make a quick withdrawal, allowing the Japanese to take control of Katshou and the Sangtung Railway. Knowing his forces were dangerously overspread, General Kamio ordered them to fortify their positions as he landed more forces at Laoshan Bay. On September the 26th, General Kamio resumed the advance, and the defenders were forced to retreat beyond the river Litsun. The Japanese crossed the river Paisha and swiftly made their way to the northern bank of Litsun. On September the 27th, they attacked Prince Heinrich Hill with a frontal assault, but were cut to pieces by the crossfire from 4 Maxim guns. Out in the bay, SMS Kaiserin Elizabeth and Leopard shelled the Japanese right flank, nearly routing them until the IJN attacked. The Cormoran, Litis, and Luch were scuttled on September the 28th, the same day the remaining harbor ships failed to make a sortie, but the SMS Jaguar successfully shelled the Japanese cruiser Sakachio. More sorties were made later, such as when German torpedo boat S-90 escaped on the night of October the 17th. She sailed southeast of Jeju Bay and attacked the Takashio with 2 torpedoes detonating mines she was carrying, sinking her and killing 264 of her crew. The S-90 was unable to return to Tsingtao, as she had run out of fuel and was forced to scuttle herself in Chinese waters. Tiger was scuttled on October the 29th, SMS Kaiserin Elizabeth on November the 2nd, and last, Jaguar on November the 7th. On October the 31st, the Japanese surrounded the city and began to dig parallel trenches similar to what they did during the Siege of Port Arthur. They then brought up their 11-inch howitzers to barrage the fortifications alongside the IJN bombardments. Under the constant cover of their own artillery, they advanced their trenches closer to the city. They bombarded the defenders for 7 straight days with an average 100 siege guns shooting 1,200 shells per day. The defenders returned fire with their heavy guns on the port fortifications on the Japanese landward positions, but they soon ran out of ammo as of November the 6th. The defenders had a single Tabe aircraft, flown by Lieutenant Gunther Plüschow, which was used frequently for reconnaissance. Plüschow had also made several attacks on blockading squadrons, dropping improvised explosives that amounted to some injuries but no deaths. Plüschow claims that while making a sortie raid, he shot a Japanese pilot of a Longhorn, killing him and downing the aircraft, which would be the first aerial victory in aviation history, if it is true. On November the 6th, Plüschow flew out of Tsingtao carrying the governor's last dispatches, which were to be forwarded to Berlin through neutral diplomatic channels. Plüschow would make his way home by August 1915 after spending 9 months in Shanghai, San Francisco, New York, and Gibraltar, where he was captured. Then he was sent to London as a prisoner of war, whereupon he escaped to the Netherlands and finally back to Germany. He would serve the remainder of the war in the German Naval Air Service, ranking as Kapitän Lieutenant in 1918, Then he became a renowned air explorer after the war and crashed in Patagonia in 1931. On the night of November the 6th, the Japanese bayonet charged the third line of defenses in waves. The defenders were almost out of ammunition and demoralized. They were quickly overwhelmed and many surrendered. In the morning, the Germans and Austro-Hungarians asked for a formal surrender. After negotiations were done, the terms were signed on November the 16th, 1914, and the Japanese and later British took possession of the colony. Upon entering the town, the German prisoners turned their backs to them. This land campaign claimed the lives of 733 Japanese, with 1,282 wounded, and the lives of 12 British, with 53 wounded. The defenders lost 199 dead, with over 504 wounded. The defenders buried their dead at Tsingtao, while the surviving 4,700 prisoners were shipped to camps in Japan. They were treated quite well, and with respect, in contrary to what is seen in World War II. After the Treaty of Versailles, they returned home in 1920. However, 170 Germans chose to remain in Japan, making a new life there. After such a long period of captivity, many most likely fell in love with the culture and met local women. Some even were part of the 3rd Marine Battalion Band Orchestra, which toured Japan in their uniforms from 1914 to 1918, becoming quite popular. So let's just summarize everything we've now learned. Japan was given a nudge by our ally Britain to help the war effort and decided to start by taking the port city of Tsingtao. The Germans did not surrender without a fight, and it was relatively brutal. Despite the hardship, the Germans were treated quite well afterwards, and Japanese-German relations would continue to thrive, feeding into World War II. Tsingtao beer is still sold to this very day, and is one of the go-to beverages when eating at Chinese restaurants. I know I love it. We hope you enjoyed this episode on the Siege of Tsingtao, and if you have not already done so, please hit that like and subscribe button, as it would mean a lot to this small channel, and it helps feed these two demon birds who have been screaming the entire time I've been filming this. This has been the Pacific War Channel, over and out.